Hey everyone, Tekk here. Welcome to Tekk's Tavern. Grab a brew, pull up a chair, and let's do another episode in our Tekk's Travels series for Rift. And of course, this is on Rift free to play now, so that is continuing to go pretty well, and I'm still playing, although I am actually a patron, as you can see here, which is weird because this is the only way I know to check besides going to the website is they put this little icon here on your character sheet for whatever reason. But a buddy of mine actually helped me out, thanks to Pastier for that, and I know him by about 4 different names, that's why I paused there. But yeah, this is just another quick episode. Actually, this episode in particular is going to be on my current build and spec that I use for playing my warrior on Rift. And I'm just going to talk about some of the abilities, kind of why I spec into certain things. First of all, I guess my play style in particular, I don't do a lot of raiding. Actually, I do no raiding, and I do very little dungeon runs like the 5-mans. I will do a 5-man run here and there, but I don't do a lot of it. I'm mostly entertained on this game by doing PvP, and then running around doing questing and rifts and zone events and things like that. So I generally like to run around PvEing, maybe with a buddy, or jump into some public groups doing the rifts and whatnot, or I am doing the PvP. I will do some 5-mans here and there. I've run some of them, and I do the Chronicles, which is one thing. If you're not familiar with the game, this game has Chronicles, which are 1- and 2-man instances. So usually I run the Hero Rises one solo, and then myself and Prizren usually will 2-man this Hive one, the Queen's Gambit, which is a pretty cool thing. You get some rewards out of it and daily currencies and things like that, so that's pretty cool. But first of all, my particular character, I'm playing a warrior, and I'll show you my current spec and talk about it a little bit. I actually have 3 different roles. My main role that I use probably 95% of the time is my Warlord DPS build, and then I do have a Tempest ranged build, which Tempest is the new soul that they included with the latest expansion, and it's a range like lightning DPS build for warriors, which is, if you're not familiar with Rift, that probably sounds crazy, and it's a pretty good build. I will switch to this sometimes, especially if I'm in a PvP match and there's no healing, like I'm just getting 0 heals, we have 1 healer on our team, then I'm not going to stay in Warlord and be jumping into the middle of fights if I'm getting no heals. So usually I'll switch to Tempest DPS and then just stand back and pew pew if that's the case. But most of the time I prefer to run my Warlord DPS, and I'll talk about that some more. And then I do have a tank build that's kind of based off of the Paladin. Actually, I don't think it's called Paladin. It's called, oh yeah, it is called Paladin. Based off of the Paladin thing in case I decide I want to run a 5-man. But, like I said, Warlord is what I use most of the time. You can see my current build, I am maxed out at 61 Warlord and then 15 Paragon. And then I do have Tempest as my 3rd soul, which there is a purpose behind that. Is because with Tempest as my 3rd soul, I do get the Shock Pulse ability, which gives me a ranged 30-meter ability that, as you can see, actually hits for, you know, a decent amount of damage. It's hitting for 3,200 plus all the attack power and all that other stuff on top of it. So, I mean, it's hitting for $4 grand or so as a, you know, instant attack type thing. And that is helpful in PvP. You get somebody running on you, you can zap them in the back as they're running. So that is very useful from a, you know, even a melee build standpoint. And it also gives me a buff here as well, which after you hit somebody, they take 2% more damage, and it's a 1-hour buff, so that's kind of cool. But I do go on the 61 Warlord build, and then the 15 Paragon, I'm kind of going backwards, covering the ones that are the fastest to explain. With Paragon, the main reason I use this, I know some people use different things like Rift Blade and some of the other ones, but I use Paragon mainly because I'm just trying to add more melee damage in particular. So I got 5 points here that generates damage on attack points abilities, that generate attack points. And then I have another here that's physical attacks ignore 10% of their armor. And then I have 5 here for increased strength. So, I mean, all those are just going towards more melee damage. And then there's several buffs you get here. This is 3% physical crit. And then this is increased strength by 70 as a group buff. So, basically I'm getting 2 buffs and more buffs. So that's kind of the idea behind the build. And the biggest thing that I do, and that I kind of wanted to share the video for anybody who maybe is tinkering around on Rift with the warrior or something like that, to help simplify some things. And I know it looks like I have a lot of buttons down here, but really this whole top row is just buffs. These four here are the postures, which I can only have 2 of at any given time. This one heals, this one increases armor, resistances, and hit points. This one increases crit, and then this one reduces the power cost of abilities. So I can only have 2 of those at any given time. Then the rest of these are all buffs I can have on generally at all times. And it's kind of a pain in PvP because every time I die, I have to sit here and recast two of these, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these. These other ones are special perk abilities and things like that. This one in particular is from one of my Planar Attunement trees, which gives 80 attack power on each weapon. That's why I dual wield instead of using 2 hands in particular. But really, those are all buffs, and then these are mostly consumables with a couple special abilities. Like this one in particular, if you would die, you get a health boost and don't die. That one's a snare. This one's an AoE thing that's mainly used for PvE stuff. And then these 3 right here are kind of important to Warlord. These 3 are buffs that you can put up that are short duration buffs. They'll last for 60 seconds. And the way Warrior works is you get these little swords, action points, that build up kind of like a rogue from WoW, if you're familiar with that. And then I can fire these off. And you can fire all of them. So you can build a 3, hit this one, go to 3, hit this one, go to 3, hit this one. And basically this one gives you more damage and more incoming healing. This one is a defensive related one. And then this one here is more damage. But you also take more damage, so it's kind of awkward. And then this is just a interrupt. But the way I play the warrior, there's some other abilities down here for jumping and for dashes and closing distance and jumping away and pulling people to you, which is always fun. And that's one thing I like about the Warlord is you're very mobile, jumping around, pulling people to you, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a sprint here. But the big thing with my Warlord in particular is that I use a macro to use a lot of my abilities. Right here you can see on the 1 button, which I have mapped to my thumb button on my mouse, you can hear me clicking it here and see the button going off, is my macro, my main macro. And then I have a finishing attack, which is breaking blow here, which you can see when I build to 3 points, it hits for 5802 weapon damage plus additional damage per attack point. So it's going to do my weapon damage plus 5802 if I build it all the way up. But this macro, so I can basically do a macro, and I will show you the macro and explain it a little bit. This is my macro, and you may say, holy cow. Yeah, it has a lot of abilities on it, and there's kind of a method to the madness, so to speak, and I will explain it a bit. But what I do is I put all these abilities on a macro, and put it on my thumb button, my mouse, and then I put my finisher on the other side thumb button. So my 2 side thumb buttons, I can do most of the stuff that has to do with my character. I do have a few other things, like some buffs and things that I do have to fire off during combat, but you know, generally I can do a lot, especially in PvP. I can stay very mobile by using my side mouse buttons in order to execute this macro. So with my main macro, the way it works here is I have several abilities, and the way you want to make macros on this game is you generally want to have abilities that have longer cooldowns towards the top, and then usually end it with your kind of instant repeatable ability. And then you can put like conditionals and things like that in between, and I'll explain what some of that means here in a second. So for instance, you can see I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 abilities. Now that doesn't mean I'm always going to fire off 11 abilities right in a row, one after the other, because there's a lot of different criteria that comes up through the course of executing this macro. So very first at the beginning, this first line just means what icon to show. That's not real important. And then the second line shows suppress failures. So I'm not going to get red failure messages on my screen because it can't fire off some ability because I don't meet the condition. But what it does is, first of all, I have decisive strike is the first one that you see here. So if we look at this, if we go in here and look at decisive strike, which is right here, you can see that the cooldown on it is 30 seconds. So that's a really long cooldown. It does some weapon damage, plus it's a big hit ability, and then it refreshes Piercing Thrust and Wave of Steel, which is fine when you're coming back around on the back side of it. But the main reason it's at the beginning is because it's a big hitter and it's a 30-second cooldown. So it's going to be on cooldown for a while you work through the rest of the abilities on the list. The second ability is King of the Hill. King of the Hill is another big hit ability. It's right here, and you can see it does quite a bit of damage, and it's on a 15-second cooldown. Okay, so the first one's on 30, the second one's on 15. So if you bam fire those off right away, then you're on a 15-second timer. The rest of these abilities are conditional generally. So the next one you see is a Quick Death. A Quick Death is kind of an execute ability, if you're familiar with the Warriors from WoW again. If an enemy's under 30% health, it does that much damage. So that generally won't go off unless they're under 30% health. Okay. Then next you have Turn the Blade. Now Turn the Blade is a Paragon ability, and here it is right here. And it's a 6-second cooldown. So this is a 6-second cooldown, but it's a conditional. It only will happen, it says here, must be used after the warrior has been blocked, parried, or dodged. So it will only go off. It'll check to see if you have been blocked, parried, or dodged before it will go off. Okay. Then the next ability is Arterial Strike, which we go back to Warlord again. And if you look here, Arterial Strike is right here. And again, if you look at the last part of that description, must be used after a critical hit. So again, it's another conditional. It's on a 6-second cooldown, but it will only go off if you just had a critical hit. The next one is Backhand. If we look at Backhand here again, it's another conditional. Must be used after the target or Warlord blocks, dodges, or parries an attack. So again, it'll check to see if one of those things happen, and then it'll let you fire it off. Okay, the next one after Backhand on the list is Piercing Thrust. Here's Piercing Thrust, and again, it's another conditional. It says must be used within 6 seconds of a charge, teleport, summon, pull, or finisher. So again, one of those things have to happen before that will go off. And then the next one is Wave of Steel, and again, it's another conditional. A 6-second cooldown after a charge, teleport, summon, pull, or finisher. Okay, and then the last couple here, Neck Punch. Neck Punch is just to interrupt, and I just throw that in there because sometimes I will forget to do interrupt, so it'll just randomly throw an interrupt out there. Neck Punch is on a 8-second cooldown, and so mainly for PvP I use that because so I can just throw it out there. Sometimes I have Neck Punch right here on my hotbar, so sometimes I'll manually do it if I see like a healer healing or something. But yeah, I just throw it in there so at least it's going off sometimes. And then Rising Waterfall is actually, I believe, another Paragon ability, and that is a follow-up ability. So that follow-up attack, it will only happen as a follow-up. So it has the ability before it has to be a starter, or I'm not sure what exactly it's called, but okay, after an attack that generates attack points. So once I use some ability that generates attack points, then this can fire off immediately after. And then the very last ability on the list is my basic Empowering Strike ability, which is an attack point building ability. So, as you can see, it starts off hitting the long-term abilities, then it goes into a big list of conditionals, which is Quick Death, Turn the Blade, Arterial Strike, Backhand, Piercing Thrust, Wave of Steel. Those are all conditionals. They only will happen if certain things are going on. And then I just have Neck Punch, Rising Waterfall, which are a couple special ones towards the bottom. And then if all else fails, if these are on cooldown, I don't meet the conditions of any of these, Neck Punch is on an 8-second cooldown, then if all else fails, Empowering Strike will be the last ability. So I will kind of show it to you a few times here in action so you can kind of see. Now if you watch, I'm just going to be hitting my thumb button on this. So I'm going to pull this guy to me. Okay, and then it's going through the various abilities right now as I'm just hammering the button. And then I got 3 finishers, so I hit my finisher. I wait for the 3 points to build up, hit my finisher. And then I should be doing this and then putting my buffs on like that. So as you can see, like with the Warlord, one thing with the Warlord, and we had a rift open over here, is there's a lot of, like, you can do a lot of charging, but you can see that it's very quick attacks, especially with the dual wield. You know, and you want to fire off these abilities in between, get 3 built up, then fire this off. And currently my buffs that I have on for the postures is I have the crit one and the power one, so that my power doesn't run out so fast. So like this guy here, I can pull him down, which actually it kind of did a weird thing there. Didn't pull him down. Sometimes it does that with creatures because of the pathfinding or whatever. But again, you can see I'm hitting this guy, fire one of my buffs, build it up again, fire one of my buffs, and then do a finisher. Right, and see, so it did the, right there at the end, you could see it did a quick death at the end because he was below 30% health. And you can see here, like, it did a couple of quick deaths once he got below. Did a rising waterfall, arterial strike. So you can see that some of those abilities, empowering strike, you can see that some of those are all going off there towards the end. So get one more guy here. You saw King of the Hill there went off. Saw waterfall, arterial strike, a quick death, backhand. So, you know, you can see the abilities. And to make sure that you have everything spelled right and all that kind of stuff, you know, you can go on targeting dummies and experiment and make sure you have all the abilities lined up correctly. Now, one thing I'll show as well is my current Planar Attunement. Just with the way I'm playing, just so you guys are familiar with this for future episodes, my PvP tree, which is the war tree here, is maxed out. I got that completely filled up. So, I mean, it gives you a lot of endurance and strength and some PvP related, you know, valor and things like that. Then I have the fire tree mostly filled, and that's mainly because the fire tree has to do with strength, mount speed, proficiency with swords, stuff like that, so that all goes along with my build. I don't have it completely maxed out because I kind of got in the last tree and got all the stuff I really wanted, and then I didn't want to waste points right now on things like more damage to fire rift creatures, and two-handed weapon mastery because I'm not using two-handed weapons. So some of these points I kind of just left hanging for right now. And then I switched to the death tree. And the death tree, again, has strength, soul walking, run speed, proficiency with swords. So I'm kind of putting points back into some of that stuff, like the strength. Here I put 4 points into attack power with swords. And things like that. So I'm kind of going to work on death for a while. Kind of once I get death a good ways through, then I'll switch and put some more points. So actually I have 1 point to spend right now. So I will put it in just one more strength there. So that is sort of my build. So I guess I showed you my build there. I showed you my Planar Attunement, and I showed you how my macro works. And like I said, that's Rift. I continue to have fun with it. Like I said, I love running around and doing some rifts and zone events and getting in the PvP and mixing it up a little bit. And it's all free. I don't have to pay a monthly subscription to do it. So that's very cool by me. If you do take the Patron, the advantage of having Patron is, the biggest advantage in particular is it gives you some buffs that you can use. So patron abilities here, it gives you some buffs that you can use to do things like it gives you extra favor, or you know, the different currencies. It gives you bonuses on those, and it gives you a couple extra summons that you can do, like you can summon a trainer right to your spot, and a patron's mailbox, so you can check your mail standing right out here in the woods if you want to. Things like that are, you know, just convenience things that are kind of cool. So that is it for this particular Tekk Travels. Like I said, I just wanted to share my build a little bit, how I play, what I'm playing, and all that kind of stuff. And maybe the next episode I do in my Tekk Travels will probably be some footage from a PvP match of maybe me and myself and Priz duoing up in some PvP matches or something to that effect. One thing we like to do sometimes is he kind of like will heal sometimes, like pocket heal, while I'm jumping around and harassing people. So it's kind of fun. But we'll try to do that for one of the upcoming episodes. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys next time in the tavern.